Good day everyone. Welcome to the part 2 of this video on the concept of demand. My name is Peters Richardson. I'm an economics tutor and my contact is there on the slide. In our last slide, when we have the discussion in our last video, we discussed introduction into concept of demand, and there were 4 objectives that we discussed then: the meaning of demand, the law of demand, factors affecting demand, and of course types of demand. So today, in this second part of this video, we are going to consider the following objectives. Number 1, we are going to look at demand schedules. We're going to look at demand curves. We're going to look at change in quantity demanded and types, and of course change in demand and types. Actually, our discussion today will focus on 2 major aspects, and these are the demand schedules and curve from one aspect, and of course the other one has to do with change in quantity demanded and change in demand. And I want to implore all of you to please pay attention to how I'm going to dissect these related but yet different concepts in economics, that is change in quantity demanded and change in demand. So to start with, we'd like to take the first 2 objectives, which is demand schedule and demand curve. But what you need to note, as this is stated here, is that a demand schedule will lead to a demand curve. So now let's consider what demand schedule is. A demand schedule is the relationship that exists between the quantities of goods demanded and their relative prices over a given period of time. How do I mean? If you take note of this table here, where you have price and quantity demanded, this is an example of what is known as the demand schedule. It is a table that discusses the relationship that exists between price and quantity demanded over a given period of time. For example, in the schedule here, you say when the price of that commodity is 5, 10 units were demanded. When the price decreased to 4, 20 units were demanded. When the price further decreased to 3, 30 units were demanded. When the price became 2, of course, 40 units were demanded. And when the price eventually dropped to 1, 50 units were demanded. So this is a typical example of a demand schedule. And we have 2 types of demand schedules. We have what is known as individual demand schedule, and of course we have the market demand schedule. The difference between these 2 is very simple. For an individual demand schedule, it's only talking about just one consumer. When we are talking about a market demand schedule, it's for 2 or more consumers. And an illustration of these 2 types of schedules is what we find in the next slide. In the next slide here, we have a sample or samples of both an individual demand schedule and a market demand schedule. The table 1 is about an individual demand schedule. As you can see it there, you have prices and quantity demanded by this an individual over a given period of time, from prices that ranges from 5 to 30 pounds, and quantity that ranges from 100 units to 0 units, as you can see it there. While the table 2 is about a market demand schedule. Why is it called market demand schedule? It's because if you observe the schedule very well, you see that there are 3 different consumers highlighted there. We have John's demand, we have James demand as number 2, and lastly we have Kemi's demand. Now, if you are to plot the graph or the curve of this market schedule, you need 2 variables. What are the 2 variables? You need the price, and then you need the total quantity demanded. And how do you arrive at the total quantity demanded? Is by adding the 3 different demands of these 3 personalities at each price together. For example, let's take 5 pounds for example. Now at 5 pounds, John's demand for 60. Can you see it? Good. John demand for 60, and at that same 5 pounds, Kemi demand for 35, and then James demand for 35 and Kemi demand for 25. So for you to know the total quantity demanded, you have to sum these 3 together. Have you seen it now? Good. That is 60 plus 35 plus 25, and that will give you 120. You do the same thing at each of other prices given to you. That is at 10 naira, at 15, at 15 pounds, at 20 pounds, at 25 pounds, as 30 pounds, and as 35 pounds. So when you sum it together, each of them will give you a total points demanded at each of the prices, as you can see it down there. Have you seen it? Good. When you sum these three, you have 40. When you sum these three, you have 40. And but because at $25, none of them demand for that commodity, then the sum of the three will be 0. So when you have to plot a graph, you need those two variables, the price and the total quantity demanded. Now let's talk about a demand curve. We have known what a demand schedule is. It's a table. And let's look at a demand curve. Remember, a demand schedule leads to a demand curve. So a demand curve is a graphical relationship that exists between goods, prices of goods, and the quantity demanded over a given period of time. And that is exactly what this is talking about, the curve that we have, that is this graph. Now can you see this graph? Here we have prices and here we have quantity demanded. So when prices rises from 20 cents up to $1, then what do you say about quantity demanded? Quantity demanded falls from 25 units to 5 units, as you can see today. So, and that is exactly what proves about the law of demand, that says that a demand curve will fall from right to left. Why? Because there is a negative relationship that exists between price and quantities of goods demanded, and that is why you see the graph, it falls from left to right. Can you see it? Good. It falls from left to right. So this is what a demand curve is all about. So what you want to know about the types of demand curve is that when you plot a demand schedule, it will give you an individual demand curve. However, when you plot a market demand schedule, it will give you a market demand curve. So that is what will lead to the two types of demand curves. So an individual demand schedule will lead to an individual demand curve, whereby a market demand schedule will lead to a market demand curve, as you can see it there. However, remember in the previous slide, which is this slide, we are asked to draw the demand curves of the demand schedules below. That means we want to plot this demand curve of this individual demand schedule and this market demand schedule. So how do we plot it? Let's look at the slide that discusses that, which is this slide. Now, this slide here, when we are talking about the individual demand schedule, remember the prices ranges from 5 pounds to 30 pounds, whereby the quantity ranges from order to 0. You can see the way it is now. So what this means is that at 30 pounds, 0 units demanded, isn't it? Then at 25 pounds, 20 units were demanded, isn't it now? At 20 pounds, 40 units were demanded. At 15 pounds, 60 units were demanded. At 10 pounds, isn't it? 80 units were demanded. And at 5 pounds, you have other units demanded. So there are these 5 coordinates here: the first coordinate, the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth. What do? You are going to use a straight line to join the coordinates together with a ruler, and that will give you the demand curve. You do the same thing for the market as well, based on the information when I told you that for the market as well, you are going to use the total demand curve to do that. I mean total demand quantity demanded to do that with the price given to you, and it also give you the same curve as well. So that is about demand schedule and demand curve. Now we want to look at our next objective, and that has to do with change in quantity demanded and change in demand. I told you that though these two terms are related, but as a student of economics, you need to be able to dissect the difference between them. There's a distinct difference between these two related terms. Now let's start by discussing first of all change in quantity demanded. Now what is change in quantity demanded? Change in quantity demanded is the movement from one point to another of the demand curve as a result of change in price of the commodities under consideration. If there's anything I want to take home from here, is that when we're talking about change in quantity demanded, number one, the changes is taking place along the same demand curve. So the movement is happening along the same demand curve from one point to the other. And the only thing that can ever cause this to happen is change in price. So it's this change in price that leads to change in quantity demanded. If you look at it, pictorial illustration very well, you see that when this item was $1, you can see that it weigh more than when it was $2. So it tends toward $1 more than $2. So as the price is changing, so likewise the quantity demanded of these commodities will be changing. And we have two types of quantity demanded. What are those types? Number one is increase in quantity demanded. That's the first type there. So it means under the increase quantity demanded is the quantity demanded will increase as a result of decrease in price. How do I mean? Look at it. When the price was P1, look at quantity demanded, Q1. Are you seeing it? Good. Now, when the price falls from that P1 to P2, are you seeing it? Now, what is the quantity demanded? P2 give us Q2. Have you seen that? So, do you see that when the price was P1, you demand for Q1. But when the price falls, decrease, have you seen it? It fell down to P2. What happened? You demand for Q2. Have you seen it now that quantity has risen from Q1 to Q2? That's what happened. So under increase in demand, it will be as a result that price has fallen. Now, if you further decrease from P2 to P3, for instance, let's say from P2 to P3, let's say this is P3, here's P3 here. Now, let's trace this thing to the demand curve and then bring it down to the quantity axis. Here we are going to have Q3. Do you observe now that when you further decrease the price, what happens to the quantity demanded? Quantity demanded increases. It tends to the right. Have you seen it now? So that's exactly what increase in quantity demanded does. So increase in quantity demanded can be as a result of decrease in price. What about decrease in quantity demanded? This one will be as a result of increase in price. It's normal that when price of a commodity falls in the market, rational consumer tends to buy more of such products. Now, if you observe from here, at P1, we demand for Q1. Have you seen it? Now, at P2, that is when the price risen from P1 to P2, the price has gone up now. What happened? You demand for Q2. What do you observe? That when price rises, what happened to quantity demanded? Quantity demanded falls. It turns towards zero. Have you seen it now? Or it turns to the left or inward. So if price also increase from P1 to P3, price goes up further from P1 to P3. Let's say this is P3. This is P3 here. Now let's trace this thing to the demand curve and trace it down. Do you observe something? That this now becomes our Q3. Are you seeing that? Q3. Do you observe that it has fallen backward again? So that is what talked about decrease in quantity demanded. But one thing I want to take note from here is that both increase and decrease in quantity demanded is as a result of change in price. Take note of that. Now, opposite of this is shift or change in demand. Shift or change in demand. So what differentiates change in demand from change in quantity demanded? Look at the definition of change in demand. You know, call it change in demand, you can also call it shift in demand. There is a change or shift in demand when the demand curve shifts to an entirely new position. Take note of that. Unlike what is happening there, you observe that that changes is taking place along that same demand curve for a quantity change in quantity demanded. But for change in demand, you have to shift it to an entirely new position. As a matter of fact, anytime you have a shift or change in quantity demanded, it requires you to draw a new demand schedule and a new demand curve. Now, and let's look at this. This is an example of change or shift in demand. Do you observe that at $12, you demand for 80 units of this commodity? With that, you are going to have your demand curve, and that's why you have your D1 here. As you can see, it is D1. Now, at that same price of $12, you increase the quantity demanded to 115 units. Now, as price changes, is it because price fell? That is why this consumer demanded for more of the product? The answer is no. So when there is a change in quantity of a product that you demand and the price do not change, it is known as change in demand. So you can see now the demand curve has shifted outward. The question now is that what are the factors that could lead to this change in demand? If it's not price, what are those factors? Then consider some of those factors that could lead to this. Now, in this slide here, we're looking at factors that cause change in demand. Just take note of this, that any factor that affects demand, which we have discussed in the part 1 of this change in demand, you can find that video in my YouTube channel. You can watch it and learn about factors that affect demand. If any of those factors affect a change in demand, but it's not price, then it is a change in demand, not a change in quantity demanded. So what that means is that every other factor that affects demand other than price will surely cause what we know as change in demand. What are some of those factors? We have income of the buyers, as you can see it here. We have consumers' trends. We have expectation for future prices, that if consumers observe that there will be an increase in price in the future time, they tend to buy more, which is not even as a result that the price is falling, but they tend to buy more. Another one is prices of related goods, which are close substitute. This has been discussed in our previous video. You can watch it to learn more about that. Then the number of potential buyers, which is population. If the potential buyers increases, that population increases, then consumers will demand for more. So these are the things that can lead to change in demand. So just know that the difference between change in demand and change in quantity demanded is that for change in quantity demanded, it can only be caused as a result of change in price. But when we're talking about change in demand, it is caused by other factors affecting demand other than price. Do you get that? Good. Now let's look at the types of change in demand. Now we also have two types of change in demand. We have increase in demand and we also have decrease in demand. Now in the increase in demand, which is the first one, it is when the demand curve shifts outward or to the right. As you can see it here, you can see here is D1, the first one, and here is D2. You can see that you are moving from D1 to D2. What do you go? You go to the right, right? Yes, you go to the right. It shifts outward. It is known as increase in demand. The opposite of it is decrease in demand. This is when the demand curve now will shift to the left or move inward. Look at your D1 here. Look at your D2. For you to go from D1 to D2, which direction did you go? You go to the left, as you can see the arrow here. Have you seen that? You go to the left. So if this ever happens, it is known as decrease in demand. So that is the difference between these two related but yet different concepts, which is change in quantity demanded and change in demand. Under change in demand, you don't have to draw a new demand curve. The changes will happen along the same demand curve. But under change in demand, a new demand curve has to be drawn, as you can see from D1 to D2, from D2 to D1. So all of this happen under what is known as a change in quantity demanded. So having understand this scope now, we want to take these few work examples just for us to see how we can answer questions under change in demand and change in quantity demanded. So let's take work example number 1. Work example number 1. The question goes thus: draw the demand curve of the demand schedule below and state what type of demand curve it is. Now let's try to see how you can draw it. You are given prices here from 5 to 35 and quantity demanded from 100 to 0 units. So let's say you can draw that. Of course, your graph is supposed to look like this. Have you seen it now? That means at 30 you demand for 0. Have you seen it now? Good. You plot it. You have your coordinate there. Then at 25, 20 units were demanded. You also join and have your coordinates. You have your coordinates there. Then at 20 units, at 20 naira, demand for 40 units. Then at 15 naira, you demand for 60 units. Have you seen it? Good. Then at 10 naira, you demand for 80 units. Is another coordinate here. Then lastly, at 5 naira, demand for 100 units. What do? You have to use a straight line to join this coordinate together to give you your demand curve, which will fall from left to right, which is how a demand curve is described. So the name of this curve, of course, is a change in quantity demanded because the changes is happening along the same demand curve. You do not have to draw a new demand curve. So that is an example of change in quantity demanded. Do you get that? Now let's take another work example, which work example number 2. Under work example number 2, the question says, present the information below using a demand curve and state what type of change in demand it is. Now, says Mr. Charles bought 10 biscuits for £20 and later bought 5 when the price increased to £40. Now, let's see how you are supposed to draw that. Of course, you are going to draw your vertical line, and then you draw your horizontal line. You present the information. Of course, your prices ranges up to £40, so you can have it from 0 to 40. And then your quantity demanded mass is 10. So if you can write it up to 15. So now look at it. When price was was £20 rather, demand for how many? Demand for 10. So of course you have it there from 20 pounds to 10 units. So here is your coordinate there, and then later bought 5 when the price increased to £40. So you can see price has gone up to £40, and what happened? He only bought just 5. Have you seen it now? Good. So here's the second coordinate. So what do? You join the two coordinates together to give you your demand curve. Have you seen that? So that is an example. That is second example under that. So question now is that what is the name of this type of demand curve? Who can guess the answer? Is this an increase or decrease in demand? How do you know? Look at it. Do you observe that when price risen from 20 to 40, what happened to quantity demanded? It falls. From where? From 10 to 5. Obviously, this is a decrease. But the question now is that what type of decrease? Is it for the change in quantity demanded or for change in demand? Of course, it is change in quantity demanded. Why? Because it happens along the same demand curve. You did not draw a new demand curve at all. So the name of such is what? Decrease in quantity demanded. Look at example number 3. The question example 3 goes thus: that present the information below using a demand curve and state what type of change in demand it is. Now, Esther bought 3 tins of Milo at £500 and later bought 5 tins of Milo at that same price. Take note, at that same price. Now let's try to draw it. Let us, please, as an economics student, you must be able to know how to draw your graph, your curves very well. Very, very important. Graph, economics deals with graphs a lot. Now let's look at it now. Let's try to illustrate. We told that at £500, Esther bought 3 things. So here is £500, right? Good. Now trace it to 3 things. 3 things. Have you seen it now? Good. So with that now, you have to draw your demand curve because there is a coordinate there where both of them meet. So here is our D1. Have you seen it now? Good. Question now continue. Then he later bought 5 things at that same price. So at the same price of £500, you can see price did not change. So any other thing could have been the reason for that. Other price not change. It could have maybe changed in taste. It could have been because population rises in the family. It could have been any other reason. It might be because she expected that there would be an increase in the price in the later time. So she rather decided to buy more. So look at it. At £500, we now bought 5 of it. Have you seen it like that now? Good. So you have it here. And that gives us our D2. Have you seen that? So you can see price as the quantity demanded rather has increased from 3 to 5. Can you see that now? Now you can see obviously this is an increase. But what type of increase is it? Is it increase in change demand or increase in quantity demanded? Of course, the answer is increase in demand. Why? Because you have drawn another curve. It does not, the increase did not happen along the same demand curve. So that leads to what we know as increase in demand. And that is what the name of the demand is all about. So this is how you have to answer question on on change in quantity demanded and change in demand. So what have we discussed over today? Of course, we have learned about demand schedule and demand curve, and we have also learned about change in quantity demanded and change in demand, which I mentioned to you that the major difference between change in quantity demanded and change in demand is that under change in quantity demanded is a factor of price. It's only price that can cause change in quantity demanded. But when it comes to change in demand, it can be caused by any other factors that affect demand other than price. Please take this carefully, study it again, watch the video once again, and try to understand it very well so that you can be able to answer questions on it whenever you are texted. So I appreciate you very much for you to have stayed for this long to watch this very important aspect in economics. Demand is a very, very important topic you must know as a student of economics. So stay tuned. I'm going to post the next video, which will also discuss more about demand. Your concept of demand still continues. You're going to see the next video in my YouTube channel very soon. So please make sure you continue to subscribe to the channel, watch and comment, and also share, because your comment is very, very important. Your comment helps me to know which area you want me to pay more attention on so I can serve you better. Thank you very much.